Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, it is Thanksgiving morning. The boys are in the state of Florida, and we have really the first domino that is starting to fall in what's going to be a wild next 72 hours. Coach Drink staying at Missouri. He was a fascinating coach to watch. Dill, he was on every single hot board. He just never seemed to be the number one candidate at any program that was looking to hire him. But can I just start hand up? This is massive for Missouri. And I know this is a hot take, and I've been going to battle with a lot of Florida fans over the last couple of weeks. I thought Coach Drink would be a great hire for Florida. Thought it'd be a pretty damn good hire for LSU as well.
To me, he was the second best out there. Lane Kiffin, I'd certainly agree, is kind of the whale. He is certainly choice number one, but honestly, you said it. When you look at their bodies of work, it's not that different. Coach Drink, what he's been able to build at Missouri, really impressive. And the bigger thing is it's been very sustainable. They recruit high school pretty well. They work the portal really well. He hires really good coaches. And when his good coaches get poached, he backfills them and hires new good coaches. What he's done, it screams to me sustainable at a big program. I think he's done an unreal job.
And that matters for Missouri. And look, this might be a hot take because I know Lane Kiffin's having a better year at Ole Miss this year. The bodies of work between those two coaches over the last 5 years, not all that different, though. And I feel like it just started with he's just not as charismatic, right? He's a little bit of a nerdy guy. Lane Kiffin has a little bit more swagger to him. I don't think that inherently makes Lane Kiffin a way better coach than Coach Drink. I know there's a lot of Florida fans that are waking up this morning to this news, and they're maybe starting to drink a little bit early celebrating. And I get that. The Florida fans want Lane Kiffin, and the LSU fans want Lane Kiffin. I think this matters for Missouri. So here's what I want to do, Dill, is one, talk a little bit more about where Missouri could go in the SEC right now, because I do think there's a unique opportunity. There's a lot of other SEC programs that are trying to find their way and trying to get back on the right path. And Missouri keeping their head coach and having some of that continuity and sustainability in this time period in the SEC,
it's huge for Missouri, not just long term, but this year I'd be really kind of interested to see, because there's going to be a lot of player movement, and we've seen Missouri be a very attractive portal destination for guys because of what they can do furthering their career. And I do think it says, frankly, a lot about where Missouri's at in terms of their resource base. Eli Drinkwitz isn't staying there if he's not being given kind of top-end SEC ability. And I think Mizzou, and he deserves a lot of credit for putting that infrastructure around. He's kind of got the resources to be very competitive, I think.
And if you can capitalize on some of this chaos, and I'll say this, and this is really the reason I like Missouri. You mentioned what they do recruiting the high school ranks, but more importantly, developing in the coaching staff that Coach Drink consistently puts together every single year. One of the things I'll say is they evaluate in the portal just about as good as anybody in the country. I really do think so. So I stock up on Missouri. Keeping your head coach, who I think has the chance to be one of the better head coaches in this program's history, especially in a time period where, look, there's the opportunity to take a jump as a program right now with all these other programs in this conference trying to figure out what they're going to do. Very excited for Missouri. Now, Dill, what's this mean for Florida? Right?
I think everybody's going to try to determine what does it mean for who's getting Lane Kiffin, because it feels like Lane Kiffin's leaving. I know there's probably a shot he's going to stay at Ole Miss, but I still kind of think that now I feel like both Florida and LSU are going to try to read the tea leaves and what this means for them, because that to me, this was the second best name off the board. And again, I'm not sure that it was the second biggest name on either of those hot boards, but he was the second best coach available, I'd say.
Look, and this is me not being an insider at all, but I've been living on the message boards the last couple of weeks, man. I feel like this is probably, if I'm reading the tea leaves right, probably better for LSU, because I think LSU thought higher of Coach Drink than Lane Kiffin, right? And I don't think Coach Drink would turn down LSU until he knew he wasn't going to get the job. It sounds like Florida. I give all the credit to the Florida fans, man. I think the Florida fans just bullied the administration. On the message boards, it was so anti-Coach Drink that they said, hey, we can't hire this guy because the fan base is going to riot. What? Can we have this conversation? Because let's just be clear. It seems like Lane Kiffin, the buzz around Lane Kiffin as we sit right now, and we know this is a very fluid situation, is probably trending to LSU, right? That's the buzz that we hear right now. What does that mean for Florida, Dill? I'll put you on the spot. Jedd Fisch. Jedd Fisch seems to be a name that is getting some buzz as of late in this Florida coaching surge. I'm going to give you the T-box. We haven't talked a ton about Jedd Fisch going to Florida. Big opinions there.
Well, it felt like for a while his name wasn't even really mentioned. I mean, you talk about one of the bigger fish out there and who's doing a good job at a big program. Like, to me, Jedd Fisch would be a really attractive name. One, what he does with quarterbacks, both recruiting them and developing them, really was a huge issue for Florida and very much holding that program back under Billy Napier. But also, like, you look at what he's done with that Washington program, doesn't it feel like he's almost kicked it up a notch in terms of what Kalen DeBoer was doing? And that's not to say Kalen DeBoer didn't have more success on the field. We all know about kind of that magic run he had with Penix and those wide receivers. But I look at the way they recruit under Jedd Fisch, the way they can work the portal, the amount of talent they're starting to bring in, and like maybe the way he's marshaling Washington's resources, which again aren't Florida, but like he's kind of made them more of a player. It feels like
they have the 16th best recruiting class in the country right now in 2020. So that is, Kalen DeBoer wasn't even sniffing that. And I want to be very clear here that I am not getting up here and saying Kalen DeBoer is not a good head coach. Kalen DeBoer would not have won a lot of football games at Washington in 2024. When he left Washington, he got out at the perfect time. You were going to lose Penix. You were going to lose all the wide receivers. You're going to lose a ton of talent on the offensive line and defensive line. Here's what I'll say to the floor.
He didn't have the recruiting base to fill it back. No. Like Jedd Fisch, in fairness, I think he's hit the portal really hard, and he had to because Kalen DeBoer left him with very little.
Yes,
but his the way he's building
and the timing, the timing of when he got that job, because Kalen DeBoer left so late, it was hard to have get a ton of traction immediately in the 2024 year. Guess what I'm trying to say is that I think people look, and you don't follow Washington all that much. It's not like a national media darling. Jedd Fisch takes over in 2024, doesn't go to the playoffs, and doesn't compete for national championship like Kalen DeBoer did the year before he left, right? I don't think that is a knock on Jedd Fisch. In fact, I think the job that Jedd Fisch has done at Washington is pretty damn good. They're currently 8-3 with losses on the road at Michigan, with a loss to Ohio State, and then kind of an ugly one on the road against Wisconsin. A lot of weather in that football game. They're only 6.5-point dogs at home to Oregon. And like the tune around Jedd Fisch, if Washington can get that game done, is going to be a lot different than it is right now. And we'll see how that game plays out on Saturday afternoon. Here are the two names that seemingly, because it's John Summerall to Auburn, right? That seems to be the most amount of buzz. In Florida, it sounds like between Clark Lee and Jedd Fisch, I'm going to put you on the tee box. How do you stack those two teams?
I'm 100% Jedd Fisch. And really the reason Clark Lee for me is so hard to figure out because what he's doing feels like almost like what Paul Johnson did at Georgia Tech, where it's like you ran a very unique, like we're not going to play like normal football, and that's going to put some pressure on other teams, and we're going to have a very wonky style, a very perfect fit at quarterback. To me, I kind of want to see what Clark Lee can do without Diego Pavia.
I think that's fair.
I don't feel like what he's doing is wildly sustainable. It's like Diego Pavia is awesome, and I think they've done a good job in the portal. But I'm not convinced he's like building a team that's like built to be really competitive.
Well, let's talk about that because I know that's a take, right? Like I want to see it do it without Diego Pavia. And I don't want to not give Clark Lee credit for finding Diego Pavia. Like, it's not like Diego Pavia was a really coveted quarterback. Vanderbilt takes a shot on him, builds their offense around his skill set, and it's an offense that's elite in 2025. I think there are things that intrigue me about Clark Lee, right? I think given where Vanderbilt was in the lack of resources, the way he has really gotten the city of Nashville around that program, like that matters. And Dill, I mean, you talking about doing more with less. I don't think there's a program in the country that's doing that better, right? And so you trust Clark Lee's it's great coaching staff. He's made some really good additions in the portal. He's developed a high school ranks. Well, he does a lot of things you like.
Well, that's probably my one pushback is like how much of a track record do we have of him developing, period? Because again, it's only been a couple of years. And B, it's been very centered around what Diego Pavia has done, and they run a really kind of unorthodox attack that, again, it puts a lot of pressure on teams because it's different. But
I think there's something to be said about a coach that can build a team around his talent. I think that is the nail on the coffin for a lot of these coaches. I mean, I go back to Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher had a system that worked with Jameis Winston at Florida. And then everywhere else and every other team he was on, just could not make it work because he was so damn stubborn. The thing I like about Clark Lee is he gonna make it work. He's showing you that he can make it work. But I am with you in the fact that if I'm Florida and I'm about to give out a $11 million annual contract to Clark Lee, wouldn't mind seeing what he does in 2026 without Diego Pavia before I'm doing that. Where you look at Jedd Fisch and say, built Arizona up into they were really good the year before he left. Then he goes to Washington, does a really good job at Washington.
The one thing I really like is he's developing quarterbacks to kind of be pros. I don't know. I'd still look at Clark Lee. Am I going to be able to sell really top-end quarterbacks running what they're kind of running?
Well, shoot, Dill, it's working with Jared Curtis, it sounds like.
Bring that up. It's maybe he can pull Jared Curtis. Frankly, I'd be really surprised if that actually happens. I know there's a little bit of buzz, but the one big thing I love about Jedd Fisch is I think he's immediately attractive to the top end of quarterbacks.
Yeah, Dylan, if you're a Florida fan, what held you back was play calling, maximizing quarterbak play under Billy Napier.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that.
I know Jedd Fisch is going to be elite at that.
And I will say this too. The in-game coaching aspect of the sport, it matters a little bit more now. Right. And I think Jedd Fisch is really, really good at developing a game plan and developing quarterbacks and getting the best out of quarterbacks. We'll probably talk more about
it. Do you think it matters that he can also possibly bring Damon Williams over and they can
100%
make the process a little quicker, maybe where Clark Lee's at, where it's kind of a reset total?
Yeah. That is a very, very good point. Is winning early, it freaking matters, right?
Especially for a guy like Jedd Fisch, because I don't know that his personality is particularly captivating. To me, that he can get off to a hotter start than
that's fair. But as a coach, what always stood out to me is when he left Arizona, he had a ton of guys follow him, right? That tells me
I don't mean that. I just mean his
media
charisma level is not super high. So it's I could see fans turning on him quicker than maybe they would for certain other coaches.
Yeah, that could be fair. I mean, here's the problem with where we're at with Florida, in my opinion. And this is the biggest disagreement that I have with the Florida fans over the last couple of weeks is that there's this sense that it's Lane Kiffin or bust. And if we don't have Lane Kiffin, it's a bad hire. Is Lane Kiffin my number one target for Florida as well? Absolutely. That doesn't mean Jedd Fisch can't win at Florida. Jedd Fisch won at Arizona, and then Jedd Fisch went to Washington and won. He probably can win at Florida too. We'll see how that plays out. And then, Dill, it sounds like for Auburn, Coach Drink was mentioning the Auburn job too, but it sounds like they probably want Summerall. I mean, I'll make my predictions right now and say LSU seems like they're going to land Lane Kiffin. You know what? All right, I'll make my predictions real quick. LSU to Lane Kiffin. Or Lane Kiffin to LSU, John Summerall to Auburn. Florida is still a little bit of an enigma, but I'm starting to buy into maybe a little bit of the Jedd Fisch hype. Jedd Fisch has always seemed like he had one foot out the door at Washington this year, whether that was going to be UCLA, whether that was going to be Florida. And then Dill, Penn State.
They put themselves in a horrible spot, I feel
really bad.
Yeah. I get really bad. And again, I don't even like Bob Chesney. Is he kind of the guy there?
I wouldn't hate it. Still, I wouldn't hate it because at least it's you don't know what his ceiling is, right? You moved on from James Franklin because you wanted exposure to get over the hump. Bob Chesney's a risk, but it's also he might. You don't know, and I hope that's what Penn State does. They're talking about keeping Terry Smith. That would be the worst. Let me just put it this way, Dale. You fire James Franklin because the program feels stale. Not because James Franklin's a bad coach. Just the program feels stale. We're kind of hitting our ceiling, right? So you're going to go out and hire his right-hand man for the last 10 years?
I agree. That'd be a really odd one. Because they need kind of a reset, I feel at this point. It's that's what they fired. If if you're not gonna get the reset, then you keep James Franklin because he was doing a fine.
I mean, if you're gonna hire Terry Smith, you should have just kept James Franklin. Well, 100%. I hope they do something like Brian Hartline, man. Like,
I'd be okay with that.
Here's my pitch for Brian Hartline, and I'm very, very surprised. And I'll say this: I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Hartline gets like what's the best way to say it? With some of the coaching movement that we're going to see, maybe he gets that second tier job. So if John Summerall leaves to go to Auburn, maybe Brian Hartline slides into Tulane. I don't know if he go to JMU. I know he's very happy in Columbus, but like the Ohio State fans are living in a fantasy world that he doesn't want to be a head coach.
He's been in there. He's made his moves on head coach jobs. Like.
Yeah, he wants to be a head coach. And is he gonna just wait till Ryan Day retires? But I don't think Ryan Day's, unless he leaves to the NFL, he ain't retiring anytime soon. Why not? Brian Hartline feels like the offensive version of Dan Lanning, where it's like you get a assistant coach that has been in a juggernaut program, that knows what it looks like, that knows what it feels like, that knows how to acquire the talent at the necessary level. Dan Lanning was.
The more I think about that, the more I think if I'm Penn State, I want a head coach, like a sitting head coach. I'd be a little concerned with.
But here's the thing: what sitting head coach do you want? They're all not going to Penn State.
Because now then you think about like what a Dan Lanning did. So it's. I guess my one issue with Brian Hartline is that in Dan Lanning, you probably could have said the same thing. He came into a monster and he just kind of kept the train rolling a little bit. So
I disagree. Yeah. I disagree. I think Oregon was in a very similar spot.
No, I'm talking about like at Georgia. Like Brian Hartline, what has he done at Ohio State aside from just keep the train on the tracks?
Yeah, but here's my selling point is Penn State's trying to go where Ohio State is. Then what you ain't gonna get Ryan Day. Like get the next best thing. Get a guy that knows what it takes and what it looks like and how to run a program at an elite level. That would be my selling point. That's Oregon did a very similar thing. Hey, we're in a good spot, but we want to take that next step. We want to get into that upper echelon of the sport. Why not get a guy that's been a part of some of those programs? You look at Brian Hartline, his first year was under Urban Meyer. The last 7 years or whatever had been under Ryan Day. He knows what it's like. And you talk about Penn State, like I'll die on this hill here. Ooh, James Franklin's a bad coach. Could he get over the hump? Well, James Franklin really never recruited the level that Ohio State recruited at. James Franklin was around 12, 15, 10. Ohio State was consistently top 5, most years top 3. Like we're banging the table. James Franklin ain't a good head coach on the football field. I think the bigger problem was you were not acquiring the talent at the same level Ohio State was. You were doing a better job than almost every other program in the Big Ten, but not Ohio State. I think Brian Hartline would be my take a risk. You fire James Franklin, a freaking take a risk. Go out and do it. It's probably the best way I'd put it. All right. We'll pause it there. I mean, the next episode we do on the coaching carousel, though, is going to be
Lane Kiffin.
It's going to what it's going to be is breaking down where these coaches are ending up, and it's going to be all day Sunday, I think. Appreciate you guys. We got a lot to talk about over the next 72 hours. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Ain't nobody going to talk about it. Really, really good keep by Missouri with Coach Drink. Talk to y'all later. Peace.